What I want to just talk about today, and maybe it's good to have a conversation, so maybe it's good to have questions or responses or things come up for you today. We haven't done that in this setting. But what came up after 2 weeks ago, I did a talk about the power of our mind and the power of surrender, the power of letting go, letting God, surrendering into that space. And I said a few things that stimulated some conversation, maybe some consternation. I'm not sure. I had few people ask me questions about what I said and wanted some clarity about that. And I don't know exactly what I said. I could go back and listen to it. I haven't. But basically, I talked about the power of our mind, and that the power of our mind really is in making a conscious choice to surrender and to allow the Spirit, the life, the one power, the one mind, to be our mind. And truly, that I'm holding to that is true. And what came up after that was that somebody said, well, doesn't that kind of go against some of what Unity teaches about the power of our thinking? That we do have power through our thinking to create our lives. Because one of Unity's 5 basic principles says, we create our lives, or we experience our lives according to our way of thinking. And also, we've added to that more recently that feeling. That we create our lives according to our way of thinking and our way of feeling. Quantum science and all of that says that the universe, that stuff out there, responds to our thinking and our feeling. And we've been teaching that for 150 years or so. I mean, Unity hasn't been around yet 150 years, but Unity came along sort of after some of the earlier teachings about the mind science, about the power of the mind and the power of the mind to heal. And then later we talked about the power of the mind and to create other things in our lives, to create prosperity and abundance and relationships and parking lots and parking spaces, right? That if we think about it, we get into the feeling of it, we can have a parking space. That was a big thing for a while, that we talked about the power of the mind. What we think about comes about. Was one of those sayings that we talk about. The power of the mind, what thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. It's a big teaching in Unity. And so what we're teaching, I think, is not that it's not true. I'm not saying that's not true. Please don't hear me say that. Because I do believe it's true. However, I do think that teaching is not the full picture. That we have to go a little deeper than that. Because what I think we sometimes get stuck in teaching is that if we can control our thinking enough, if we can just rein it in, that we can do anything we want to do. I mean, we have to control every thought. And I'm like Dr. Phil. Now, how is that working for you? Have you figured out yet how to do that? At some level, yes, we do that. We think if we can intervene on our thinking, and that is an important spiritual practice, to be aware of what we're thinking, to choose different thoughts. And by choosing different thoughts, we have different feelings. By choosing different thoughts, we can be inspired to take different actions. And we know that the actions also help to manifest our lives. So I'm not saying, again, please don't hear me say that there's not truth in that, because there is truth in that. But I also think well, here's what sort of came to me about it this week. And again, I just really like living in this question. I like these teachings. I love the Unity teachings. I love teachings about New Thought, but I don't always take them as the gospel. And I encourage you to not take them as the gospel. because they have to be our experience. Unless we take them in, unless it becomes our experience, all it is just a concept. It's an idea. And so what I think about that, again, is that when we believe that we have to control our thinking, we're really, in some way, feeding the ego. We're giving the ego something to do. And the ego takes charge of that and says, I can control my thinking, I can create whatever I want, I can manifest a parking space if I think about it long enough and hard enough. And so in some ways, I think the ego can get caught up in managing our thinking. And so I just invite us to take it a little deeper, to go a little deeper with that. Because what is it? Why do we want to control our thinking in the first place? Because we want better life. We want something different in our lives. We want health. We want relationships. We want love. We want money. There's nothing wrong with wanting money. Nothing. We want those things. And so what came to me about that this week, and again, it's not unique to me. I'm not saying I have this new truth. But what came to me about that is that we, as human beings, don't necessarily just experience life according to our thinking. We experience life and manifest life and create our lives based on the content of our consciousness. And thinking is just one aspect of our consciousness. But we give thinking so much focus, so much power. Why do we do that? Why do we give so much focus to thinking? You know, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I think the truth really is more like I am, therefore I think. Because thinking happens. But when we think that we're defined by what we think, then we're limiting ourselves. And I think that's sort of what we can get caught up in, is that, okay, well, if I think this about myself, then I can improve myself. I can improve my condition. So what is thought? When we think about that, why do we focus so much on our thinking? And I think that what came to me about that is that because it's the easiest thing for us to focus on. It grabs our attention more quickly and readily than anything else that happens in our environment. Because sometimes we even have to stop and ask ourselves, what am I feeling? Where am I? What's going on with my body? But if I said to somebody, what are you thinking? Somebody could probably tell me very quickly, it's just what I'm thinking. And so we allow thinking to define us. You with me? Are you agreement with that? We think, therefore we are. And so we give thinking a lot of energy, but there's so much more that goes into what happens, how we create, how we feel about ourselves. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, talks about the phases of mind. The conscious mind that's conscious of thinking sometimes, conscious of feeling. I'm conscious of you sitting in that chair. I'm conscious of the chair. I'm conscious of the lights. I'm conscious of what's going on. I invite myself to be conscious of what I'm feeling, what's going on in my body. I can be conscious of all of those things. And so we choose what we are conscious of. There's a point of awareness there. You're not the thinking. You're not the body. You're not the feeling. I like this idea that we are all a point of awareness in the one mind. And our power is in focusing that point of awareness. I think that's truly the power of mind. It's like if I had a flashlight, I could focus that flashlight on my thinking and I can become keenly aware of my thinking. I can focus that flashlight on my feeling and I can become keenly aware of my thinking, my feeling. I can focus that out here and I can become keenly aware of you. So I'm a point of awareness and I get to choose what I'm aware of. But there's also that subconscious mind that is this field of energy, past experiences, memories. Some people would say even past life experiences. I think it can hold the memory of all of history, that we have access to all of that. Past, what we think of as past, what we think of as future, what we think of as present, it is all here now in this field of energy. I like to call it the mind field. M-I-N-D field. It could be also called the M-I-N-E field because there are a lot of explosives in that mind field. And what happens is that mind field gets impressed upon the conscious mind, and that then helps to then facilitate what's being created. What Charles Fillmore says is that all of that subconscious mind is there, all of that subconscious field is there, and what happens is that field then becomes impressed upon the conscious mind, and then that is what helps us to then determine what we feel, what we think, how we act, what we do, and when all of that goes into what we are creating and manifesting in the world. And so, what he says about that, the solution to that, is for the conscious mind to then look to the superconscious mind rather than the subconscious mind. The superconscious mind being the mind of God, the Christ mind, the mind of divine ideas, peace and joy and love and abundance and all of that idea. And so it's important for us to be able to, instead of, it's like that, and I know there are probably some psychotherapists, psychologists in here, and part of that is to try to make the subconscious conscious, but how long is that going to take? How long is it going to take to make all of that stuff that's going on in the subconscious conscious? I don't have that much time, nor do I have that much interest or willingness. There's some value in that. Don't get me wrong, there is some value in that. But I think really, the reason I think this is so important for us to get is that there's only really so much we can do with the conscious mind in its current state. We can choose our thinking, and by choosing our different thoughts, we can then change how we're feeling, our emotional state. We can be inspired to take different action. We can create things in our lives through that. The power of visualization. I am not discounting any of that. What I am suggesting today and inviting us into today is to really look at what Paul said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. To be transformed, change form, to be renewed, to be regenerated, for the mind field that I'm talking about, to be renewed and regenerated, I believe can't happen solely through our conscious mind. You and I, please hear me, I hope you hear this the way I want it to be heard. You and I cannot do that. on our own. What I think Paul is saying is that, again, we have to go to the Christ mind. We have to turn it over to the Christ mind and allow that Christ mind, that is the true mind, the one mind, the only real mind, to be our mind, to infuse our subconscious and our conscious with the divine ideas of mind. The only, let me say this, how do I say this? I say these things, and sometimes, please question this because I don't know. The only way we are ever going to create a world that reflects the divine ideas of God, the divine ideas of unity and wholeness and prosperity and enough for everyone, a world that really does work for everyone, and I'm talking about the manifest world, is if we are willing to turn it over to the ideas of the Christ mind, allow those ideas to be impressed upon the subconscious mind and upon the conscious mind, and then act from that. That is the only way that is ever going to happen. And I think that is really what we want. And let me say this about that. It may not be consciously what we want. Make sense? Because our conscious mind is now being fed by the subconscious mind. But in unity mind, in God mind, in Christ mind, when we allow that to be our mind, what we want changes. Our desires change. We are transformed at depth. Because in that mind, there is really no separate me and you. There's only one. And in that mind, anything that I desire for all. Any want that arises in my mind arises from that consciousness, and it's for the good of all. There is absolutely no way in that consciousness, in that mind, that I could have a ego self-centered desire. Now, that does not preclude you from having love in your life, from having the perfect job in your life, from having money in your life. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying, and what I'm trying to get clear, not only in this talk, but in my own mind, in my own heart, is what does it really mean to allow the mind of God to be my mind? To fill that field of subconscious mind, to sweep that field clean. You see, I can't do it by myself. My therapist for 20 years has not been able to do it, even with my help, with my full engagement, sometimes. It takes a power greater than me solely to do it for me. To sweep clear that mind field. And to then allow my conscious mind to be impressed by those ideas. My actions inspired by those ideas. And the only ways that I have found to do that is through a practice of prayer and meditation. Now, I know what you're going to say, some of you. I can't meditate because my thinking doesn't stop. Right? Well, I got news for you. Your thinking is never going to stop. That's what happens. Thinking happens. The power that you have is to focus your attention and your awareness somewhere else. When thinking happens, as I said earlier, our attention immediately wants to go there because it's so habitual. We have allowed it to define us for so long. My opinions, my judgments, my ideas, my concepts, all of that is so important to my identity that if I let go of that, who the heck am I going to be? Right? And I get it. I'm with you totally. But the power is, think of it as your awareness is that flashlight. You can focus on that thinking all day long. Or you can say, I'm choosing now to focus my attention and my awareness in something that is beyond that. Something higher, brighter, broader, more expansive, God mind. It's not separate. You're enfolded in it always. Always enfolded in God mind. That which you think of as your mind field, is enfolded always in the allness that God is. It's never separate. Only in your focused awareness can it possibly, you think it's separate. But what I'm suggesting is in meditation we go beyond that. We go beyond our thinking, we go beyond our feeling, we go beyond the identification with the body and feel into this field, this other field of God mind. And allow that mind to clear away some of this other stuff. Turn it over. Allow the mind of God to renew your mind so that your mind is first transformed, changes form. Your thinking then changes form, becomes a different frequency, a different energy. Your desires become infused with that consciousness. Therefore, the actions that you take in the world, the words that you speak, the steps that you take, the things that you do, then become inspired from that deeper mind, that knowing. And so you don't have to control your thinking any longer. Ultimately, and I'm not saying it's going to happen like that. I'm not saying it. For some people it has. It's been this instantaneous sort of, I get it. I'm awakened. For most of us, it's gradual. That's why we suggest a daily practice of prayer and meditation. Turning it over, letting go, letting God. That's what I talked about last week. Let it go. Ultimately, you can't do it anyway. And I don't mean to sound that that's a disempowering. The power that you have is in letting go, turning it over, focusing on something else, and allowing that something else to be the source of your thinking and your doing, your being. And in that way, we truly do create a world that reflects God mind, deeper mind, higher mind, in our own personal lives, in the lives of our community, the lives of everyone on the planet, everything on the planet. And so, maybe that's the adventure I'm inviting us into. Because everything that shows up in our lives, I had this awareness last night. I've told you before, my best ideas come when I'm sitting in the bathtub. So I was sitting in the bathtub last night, and I realized that everything I see is a reflection of me. Everything I see, I see me in everything I see. Because everything that is in that mind, I project onto everything I see. So I see me, maybe not the true me, but I see me in everything I see. I see me in everyone I see. Sometimes that's good. I mean, it's always good. But do you see what I'm saying in that it's a great awareness for me because I recognize that I look at you, but I'm not really necessarily seeing you. I'm seeing my idea of you. I'm seeing my evaluation of you, my judgment of you, if I have one. I'm seeing who I think you are. And that was such a powerful awareness for me because what I realized is that I'm not even going to say when that mind field, my mind field is cleared, when I am in that place of God consciousness, and we all get there, we all have those experiences, that I only see the reflection of God and nothing else. When I know myself as that, I see that in everyone I see. So wherever I am, whatever is going on for me, that's what I see. So guess where it goes? Guess where it starts? So I say that because it's another opportunity to see everything as an adventure. Who's showing up in my life right now? How is that person calling forth in me my highest potential? How is my mind field, whatever stuff is in there, showing up as a reflection in that person? And how can I then allow that to remind me to be called forth into my highest and best potential? I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking today. But really, I wanted to try to explore in depth, a little bit more in depth, this idea. Because it's important to me that we don't continue to take some of our teachings at face value. And because they can be confusing. That we go a little deeper. We take them a little deeper. Understand them at a different level. And practice it at a different level. So, the idea is just to allow, so easy, just shift your focus to the superconscious mind, the mind of Christ, the mind of God, through prayer and meditation. Allow that mind to impress upon your field of mind those divine ideas. Unity, harmony, order, peace, And allow that field of energy to then be impressed upon your conscious mind so that you are consciously acting, creating, thinking, manifesting, feeling, demonstrating, all that is in alignment with the highest potential, the highest good that is possible. And as we commit to that, as we do that, we will see a world transform.